Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm working on a range backpack pattern by Noodlehead. I amend the pattern to use cork and cotton, and I list all of the changes that I made in the description box below, so check there for measurements. You can get the original pattern on Noodlehead's website and then follow along with all the other measurements and with the steps. I do make references throughout the construction of the patterns and what step I'm on. There is a little bit of squirreliness in the video because as I was constructing it, I added the straps too early and yada yada. So you'll see, I leave cues throughout the video that you can follow. So if you are planning on making one with me, be sure to follow the cues. Jump to the spots that I tell you to jump to, and you can make it in the proper way, or you can make it the way that I made it and have the same struggles that I had, which you can fix. You can get through them, obviously, because I was able to, but you will need to be using 1.5 inch hardware in order to make that work, and a little bit of extra oomph because I ended up putting the straps in the wrong direction. You'll see. It's you know, I've done it before, I'm sure I'll do it again. But yeah, so if you are making and following along, just be sure to follow those cues. The entire video stops and there's text on the screen with a beautiful photo from White Sands that I took myself, humble brag. So yeah, just follow that. Otherwise, just watch straight through if you're just watching, and you'll see it the exact way that I made my bag. And yeah, so anyways, be sure to subscribe if you like the video, leave me a comment, let me know what you think, and yeah, join my sewing group. I'll link that in the description box below, along with the original pattern by Noodlehead. So thank you. So I figured you guys didn't want to see me interface because we all know how boring that process is. So I went ahead and I interfaced all of my pieces. They're all ready to go down here. And I'm going to get started on quilting my back panel. Remember that I amended my size because I am going to add cork to mine. I'm going to add cork to the top of mine to create the section that will fold over when it's closed at the very end. So you have to imagine with me here. So I went ahead and made a quilt sandwich, and I put fabric and then the batting, and then which is fleece, and then my 808. And because it is rather soft, I don't want the fabric to shift when I'm sewing it, so I'm gonna make my marks on the back. And I've already kind of started here. I don't know if you could tell. You can't, which is good because I messed up. But so what I'm gonna do, what I did is I marked my center line. So this is 16 inches wide, so I made a line at 8 inches in, and I am going to start making my lines. So my first line is 1.75 inches from the center line here at 8. I measured 1.75 over. That's the angle that I'm taking. Obviously, you can do whatever you want to do. So make that first line, and then I'm going to measure 1.5 from it and make another line. Then I'm just going to continue that process. 1.5 from each previous line, and I'm marking from my center line out. And then whenever you pass your center, or when you're beyond your center line, just keep measuring from each of these lines that you've made. So I have half of it done. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to flip and measure. Let's see. I want to make sure that I get the right angles here. So before, what I did is I went out 3... There we go. So now I have my angle, and now I'm going to do the same thing. And what I'm going to do, or what's going to end up, is this is going to be a V pattern when it's quilted together. which is how Noodlehead does it in her original pattern for the range backpack. I've never done it like this. Normally I do 1 inches, 1 by 1, like a standard, you know, square pattern. So I'm getting a little crazy here. I don't know if you can see it, but oh, there you go. So you can see some of the lines that I made. And so I'm going to move over to my machine and I'm going to start quilting. All right, so I have my back panel piece here that has all of my markings on it, and I have my machine threaded. I'm going to extend my stitch length to a 4. I have a Microtex size 12 or 14. Oh, size 14. And yeah, so I'm going to start quilting this. You want to check to see, make sure the fabric is doing well. Oh yeah, that's good. There we go. So I'm going to continue to do it from this side just to ensure that the fabric doesn't shift down there. So I'm going to move back over to the table, to the cutting table, and we will get started on the next step. All right, so we have done the 2 prep steps, which were to apply the interfacing and to quilt the back panel. So I moved all that out of the way, and now we are technically on step 1 of the pattern, and we are making the strap and the strap holders. So in the pattern, it calls originally for a 1" by 6" times 2 pieces of cotton, and then it tells you to fold them in half in on each other and then to slide the connector in. But to me, that's rather bulky, and I don't really want to try to sew through that plus the cork actual connector. So what I did originally was I cut 2 pieces of fabric 3 inches wide by 6 inches long. Ruka, stop licking, please. He drives me crazy when he licks. I apologize. But those are going to be really long, because the way that I do them is I fold my long edges in and then I fold them in half, but see, they're too long. So what I did instead is I just took one of my connectors and I cut it in half. So now I have 2 3 by 3 inch squares. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to I'm just going to take 2 edges and fold them in towards each other, and you press, which I've already done. And then what we're gonna do is in a minute, we're gonna move back and we're gonna top stitch these. But so before we go back to the machine, I'm gonna also get my side connectors ready. So the side connectors are what's going to hold this guy in. So once we get our strap hardware in there, this goes in here like so. And then that becomes our strap, which will cut this to make it a triangle, but you'll see. So that becomes our strap connector. So to prep this, I'm just gonna finger fold this down 1/2 inch. Give that a good finger press so that it can become creased while we are top stitching our side connector, or side whatever they're called, strap holders. So 1/2 inch on this one. Clip it. Okay. So now while those are creasing, I'm gonna pop back over to the machine and I'm gonna top stitch down both sides of my, excuse me, both sides of my strap connector. All right, so I went ahead and did that. Let's see if you can see. Anyways, I used a 1/8, don't mind my fingernail, my gel popped off today, or my dip. So I just top stitched 1/8 all the way around. And so I'm going to slide my strap hardware on, line up all my edges, and then clip it for now. Do that on both of them. All right. And then, so now my side connectors are finger creased at 1/2 inch. And what I'm going to do is fold them in half, short sides together, which is going to move, it's going to create that sandwich there. See the bottom, that's not the folded edge that we did, that's the folded edge. So I'm going to take my my ruler and I'm going to cut from corner to corner. And that now creates a triangle, and we still have our folded edge here. Then I'm going to take one of my strap holders and I'm going to slide it in between this sandwich that I've made. And I'm going to place it about 1/4 inch from the double folded edge. So 1/4 inch in on this side. And then I leave just under 1/2 inch sticking out. Clip that into place. And I'm gonna do the same thing on my other connector. So with the top edge crease still there, I'm gonna fold it in half. Line up all my short edges. I'm gonna cut corner to corner. Keeping everything in place so it doesn't shift. I'm going to slide my strap connector and its hardware, or my strap holder, into that pocket. And you can see on the inside what it does is it encases that strap holder, and then it's going to stick out and just be really cute. And then this is what we're going to attach the shoulder strap to later. So I'm going to pop back over to the machine and I'm going to top stitch. I'm going to start at this open edge here and I'm going to top stitch with 1/8 inch down, and then I'm going to come over my strap holder here and I'm going to back stitch really well on both ends. And yeah, I'm just going to top stitch both of these. I've got my side connectors, strap connectors all top stitched. I am going to add some rivets to just stabilize it even more. So I can feel under there where the bottom of my strap connector is. And I am going to put 2 rivets just to be sure that it stays put. I have this from by Piera, which unfortunately she is not making acrylic templates anymore, but I think Tops and Bobbins might have them. I'm not really sure, but it's super handy. It does the 1 inch with 1 rivet, 2 rivets, and then 1.5. I use it all the time. All right. So I'm just going to set these to the side for now. And then step, I don't even know. I think we're still, oh yeah, we're still in step 1. So next she wants us to fold a strap. Oh, make the straps. I'm not going to do that yet. So I'm going to skip to step 2, and this is to assemble the front exterior panel, pocket panel. So I'm going to find that over here. This is the fun part. I like doing this step. This is what really makes the pattern feel like it's moving along. Okay, zipper panel. I have my zipper panel pocket piece, whatever it's called, and I am going to mark a line down the middle of it. Here. And then I'm going to mark a line 2 inches to the right of that line that we just marked, and then 2 inches to the left. And then I'm going to fold the 2 outer lines. I'm going to fold wrong sides together. And then the pattern says to top stitch these lines. So fold this one. Get out of here. All right, so now I'm going to top stitch down 1/8 of an inch on both of those. And then the pattern tells you to, with the panel piece right side up, you're gonna fold these to meet each other right down on that middle line that you made. So let's see, it'd be easier to do it like this. And then you'll see this is how it creates that gusset. So I'm going to put just a quick line of stitches here just to hold this in place. The video just cut off on me over there when I was sewing, but what I was saying is that I put a couple basting stitches here just to hold that section down. And I didn't bother doing it on the bottom yet. I'll do it on the next step. So the next thing we have to do is the same thing with the fabric side. So the lining, fabric, is this it? Yes. So I'm going to do the same exact thing. Mark my midline, 6.5, 2 and 2. And then find this other one here. I can barely see. All right, so I'm gonna go back and do the same thing. I'm just gonna top stitch down either end and then fold and then baste at the top. I went ahead and did all of that, and then because the cork, normally the pattern tells you to make a zipper sandwich and then flip and then top stitch, but then that would make double this. So I would make 12 layers plus a zipper, and I don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this top basted edge on the lining down about 1/2 inch as if I've already sewn it to the zipper. Essentially, I'm just doing this step, whatever. I'm doing this, you'll see. So I folding this down 1/2 inch, and then I'm going to flip it wrong side up. I'm going to take my zipper and lay it right side up on top of this folded edge here, and I'm going to glue this into place. I'm also going to glue this down because this is a lot of layers. All right, so I'm going to glue baste my zipper into place. like so. This is what it looks like along the back. I'm gonna come and pull the zipper tape up a little bit because it's a little close to the teeth. All right, and then I'm going to, because I sew with raw edges on my cork, so I'm going to straighten up this top edge where these folds are. Hit it with a quick lighter. I'm going to take the glue that I normally finish on my raw edges with, and I'm just going to hit this section real quick. This is what stops it from fraying. Okay, and then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue this right side up on top of this whole sandwich that I made. And then this is going to create my zipper pocket that will be along the front. I'll flip this back, put some glue. So now I'm going to pin this into place. So I also just remembered something that I normally always forget, so I'm glad I actually remembered. I need to put my tag on. And I'm going to put it onto this pocket before I move forward. So I'm going to grab a tag. Let's see. Whoa. Sorry about the shaky, but so you can see on this one I put it here in the corner, and that's what I'm going to try to do again. But I'm going to have to move it up because I used a 1/2 inch seam allowance to sew this to the contrast bottom. So I have to keep that in mind, the seam allowances, when I do my placement. So I'm going to go, I'm going to go 0.75 inches up and 0.75 inches in. And I'm going to glue my tag down. I've never put my tag there. I always put it in different places every time. Alright, so now that this glue is set, I'm going to go back to the machine and I'm going to top stitch here along the front, being sure to catch this pocket on the back. And then I'm going to top stitch around my tag too. Alright, so now I'm just going to pick out these basting stitches that I put in the cork earlier. Just so the line, just so it looks better. All right, so the next step says to get the center panel. And then what we're gonna do is lay this down, lining up our sides and edges here. And I'm gonna take a little bit off my bottom. I've got some excess here from the bottoms not being super flush. So yes, that's just gonna make the front pocket smaller, which will be fine overall. So now I'm gonna line up the sides in the bottom here, clip into place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my machine and I'm going to top stitch around the top of the zipper here and then down and around this whole box to hold everything in place. And then, yeah, never mind. So now we've got it all basted together all the way around the square, and you can see when you unzip it, the cork is showing down here, and then the lining is in there. And so the next step calls to lay the zipper strip on top here, but you have to have the bottom, the lower closure ready, and that was supposed to be done in step 1, which I forgot to do, so I went back and did that. Originally, I was going to use these eggplant and natural straps, but I didn't really love the look of it, so I changed them to mint and natural. So if you're sewing along with me, you're going to have to stop and make your upper loop, lower loop, and your hang loop. And then, so this is my lower loop, and you can see that it has 3 layers of cork here, which would obviously double to 6 if I were to fold it all the way half. So what I decided to do is fold it over about 1 inch here with this excess, and that is what I'm going to tuck under the zipper strip as directed in the original pattern, but I'm going to leave that excess there, and then I'm going to put a rivet through it to hold it in place. And then that way I only have to sew through 3 layers and plus the zipper strip. So I am going to glue down one side of this strip. I'm going to lay it right on top of the zipper. And then I'm going to put a little bit of glue right here just to try to hold this down better. Then I'm also going to put glue all along this bottom edge. And then lining up the center of my lower loop with my midline on my pocket here, I'm going to slide this under until it meets up with that folded edge. And then I'm going to glue down this top. The rest of this, actually, the rest of the zipper strip. Shift it on me. All right, so I'm gonna let this glue set, and then next thing I'm gonna do is just top stitch around this entire zipper box here, and I will be right back. So I got this all sewn down, and now I'm going to put a rivet right here to hold this back section down. So I'm just going to mark a spot here. See here. I've never done the range this way, so we're learning together. There we go. Alrighty then. Alright, so now that was step 2O, and now we are going to step 2R. So I'm going to gather my, well, I'm just going to get one side piece. So this is my side panel piece here, and this is going to be laid right sides together. I'm going to move my zipper head out of the way. So my zipper is a metal tooth zipper. It's turning right in my eyes. Metal tooth zipper, and if you can tell, it goes all the way to the edge. So I'm gonna have to be super careful when I'm sewing over this. So I'm just gonna line up my long straight edge, clip in place. And do the same with the other side. Now I'm going to go back to the machine, and I'm going to top stitch this, and it calls for a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'm probably going to go a little bit less than that. I normally go, I don't know, I'll probably do like 3/8. So yeah, I'll see you at the machine. Since I'm already over here, I'm just going to go ahead and finger press this open and top stitch. I'm going to top stitch with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance here. all together and top stitch down the sides. The next step is to attach the contrast bottom to the section, and I've gone ahead and cut out the boxes as instructed in the pattern, so you'll reference that. So I'm just going to clip it all together down here. So I'm going to move this out of the way. After that, we have to attach the back panel to the contrast bottom, which is not completed yet because I cut it into sections. So what I'm going to do is take my reinforcement strip, and I'm going to go right sides together, and then I'm going to top stitch, or I'm going to stitch these together, and then it'll flip up, and then I will attach this to the actual top portion. So I'm going to move over to the machine and get these going. To move on to the next step, which would be to put the back on, or connect the backing to the contrast bottom, I need to make the straps, because the straps need to be attached before I can attach the top of the back. So I'm gonna go way out of order here, but bear with me. So let's see, I'm gonna move all this out of the way. I went ahead and cut my straps. I cut 3 inches wide by 36, and then out of contrasting cork, I cut 1.25 inches by 36. And now I'm just gonna get them folded and sewn up. that step. Again, I'm kind of skipping around here, but technically step 4D. And because I am doing my assembly different, what I'm going to do, this is the top piece of the back panel. So here's the bottom piece here, and it's going to attach like this. But first I need to lay out my hang loop and my straps and my top closure, my upper closure. So what I'm going to do is attach that. I'm just going to glue baste all my pieces to this top panel, top back piece, blah, blah, blah. We'll go from there. So I'm going to mark my center because this will be covered up. I don't mind marking on the front here. So 6, 16. Okay, so the first thing that's going to go on is this top closure. And to finish this off, I'm going to trim this. And then I'm just going to fold this under about 1.5. So I'm making a 1.5 inch fold. And then I'm going to rivet this together. I'm just going to clip it so that I can mark it. Actually, psych. Rivets are so weird. Sometimes they work, sometimes they fit, sometimes they don't. There, so now I'm going to lay this right side up, and I'm going to align the middle of this upper closure right on this midline. I'll just glue baste that into place. And the next thing I'm going to do is do my hang loop. And so the pattern tells you to apply it like this. So I'm going to put some glue down and do just like that. The next I'm going to do is put my straps on the same way. Take up this edge here. That's the side I want to show. And then you just lay these all in a row. I'm going to take my other strap and glue it down on this side here. And then I'm going to what am I trying to do? Oh, this one? No, here it is. Okay. I'm going to sandwich. I'm going to lay this. I'm going to overlap this piece about 1/2 inch and glue that down, encasing all of those lines or all of these straps here. So I'm going to let this glue set for just a minute, and then I'm going to just stitch down across all of this. Top stitched. I've got everything stitched down. I'm going to go back and add rivets. So use my handy dandy tool and just do some placement marks. These can be kind of hard to get all in a straight line, which is why these tools are really great. But even with this, I still make them a bit wonky occasionally. finally move on. I'm going to do contrasting bottom to the bottom of the back panel, right sides together, clip, and then move to the machine and sew it. As you can see, we've got all of the outer put together now. We've got the front panel, contrast bottom, all the way down to the back. Here are the straps and that whole system. And so the last thing that we need to do before, or the second to last thing that we need to do before we make it into a bag is we need to add our strap holders. So I'm going to make sure that my nice folded edge, not this, what am I trying to say? Yeah, so this anchor part, or strap piece, is on top. I'm just gonna lay it and line up the edges, and I'm gonna line up this point to this bottom seam here. I'm gonna do the same thing over here. Then I'm just going to move back to the machine and I'm going to just baste these into place. So we are to the last step before we sew the backpack right sides together to create the actual bag. And this is the part where the straps go into the bottom to become adjustable. And it wasn't until now that I realized I did this wrong. So you were supposed to thread this through the bottom first before sewing everything down here, which I almost had a panic attack when I just realized that, but let's see it. But because I'm using 1.5 inch hardware, I'm able to fit and kind of go around and do this the back way. But if you are following along with me and you're making a bag with me, do not do this part yet. And I will be sure to leave a comment earlier whenever I start to do this to skip that. So, yeah, or you can do it like me, but it's not the easy way. There's a much easier way to threading these, but obviously it can be done because I was able to figure it out. So basically I can show you what I did so you know what not to do. I think I used to do all of my straps like this, and then I realized that there's a much easier way. So you're going to thread you've got the tri-bar here, the tri-slide, thread up and over that middle bar, pull it up and through, and then you're going to put it through this strap anchor. And then because this is where I messed up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to feed this up, give myself some room here, and I'm going to take my strap and loop it along the back right here, and then go inside and loop it back down around that middle bar. So you can see I get there in the end. I'm able to loop around that middle bar, but this is the hard way to do it. because now I'm gonna have to rivet it and do all of that from inside the strap, which makes it a super pain. But first, I need to make my marks of where I'm gonna rivet. Here we are. Go ahead and mark this one while I'm here. All right, so I've got it looped around that middle bar. I'm gonna go into my strap hardware, back up and through along the back side, and then loop it back down over that crossbar. And then you get to watch me struggle to put rivets in. That's fun. Let's see, how can I do this? Here we go. And so I'm gonna leave about so it's 1.25 inch overlap down here. I'm gonna leave, which is important because you want to do your other strap the same length, so then that way they're even, which obviously they're adjustable, so it's fine, but then that way the buckles are all sitting at the same place. Toss a rivet in here to hold its place. I'm so glad I figured out that I could do it like this. Otherwise I would have had to pop all of these rivets out. Oh, that would have been rather annoying. I'm sure I've had to do it in the past because I'm just good like that. Oh, come on. These rivets are so freaking weird. That's what I did. Oh gosh, having long nails makes sewing so challenging. Okay. Alright, so I'm gonna rivet those down, or use my press before I forget. Send out this backpack with unpressed rivets. Alright, so we got there in the end. Adjustable strap, no big deal. Don't do this at home. Punching it up. Okay. So we're gonna put this strap through. I'm gonna thread it through the strap holder. Okay. Some excess over here. What a mess. It's funny. There, thank goodness that was salvageable. I would have cried. All right, so now we're at the super fun step of folding these bad boys right side together and sewing. Next all we have to do is the lining, and then we're done. Okay. So I'm gonna line up all my edges, my side seams here. Pretty straightforward. Clip into place, then we're gonna sew. Gets a little thick down here where the strap anchor is, or strap holder, whatever. So just be sure that you line everything up. Oh, I didn't line this up. Because why would I do that? Kitty's trying to come in. I can hear her scratching at my door. That's interesting. This side meets up perfectly, but the other side was short. Strange. See? It's really hard to see, but I have to take my word for it, I guess. Anyways, all right, well, I'm going to move to my machine, and I'm going to stitch down both sides here. I was able to fiddle with this a little bit more before sewing it, and I was able to get it even, so that's good. Now I know that the backpack itself won't be sideways. So it gets really, really thick with the strap holder. Be sure to backstitch well. The next step would be to box out this bottom corner here. As nicely as you can. Same with the other side here. See everything all nice and even. I laid this part flat here. I'm just going to top stitch this at a 1/2 inch, or whatever, not top stitch, so sorry you're not gonna be able to see anything, but just use your imagination. Oops, something over here. Alright, let's go back to the sewing table and flip this bad boy open. Before I flip, I'm going to cut down my seam allowances a bit here. I'm going to leave this where my strap holder is. You know what, I think I'm actually going to throw in a second line of stitching on the strap holder just to be sure that nothing moves. Because when this bag is full of stuff, I don't want it to lose its, you know, I just don't want it to come off. These guys down too. Alright, so I'm just going to go back and where this strap holder is on both sides, I'm just going to throw in a second stitch line here. Alright, let's flip it outside, or flip it right side out. Nails are flexing. I think it looks pretty darn good. Quilting on the back, looks nice. Not too shabby. Let's give her a test run on this clothes. Oh gosh, this is always a scary part for me. Oh, yay. Perfect. Obviously that overlap won't be there whenever the lining's in, but looks pretty cute if you ask me. Let's see. Sweet. Alright, so now we're going to work on completing the lining of the backpack. So the first step is we need to sew in the pocket. So I have my pocket panel here, and this would normally be 10 by 20, but I only had 17.5 inches. So my pocket's going to be 10 by 17.5, or at least that's what I'm working with. And what I'm going to do is make marks on the right and left hand side at 1 inch in, and then 1 inch from the top. And then I'm going to measure from this top line 3/8 down, so then the opening is a 3/8 inch opening. And make that line. So next I'm going to grab my lining piece and I'm going to center it on here. All right, so there's that. So I am going to set my pocket piece 8 inches down the top of it as instructed, or 7 inches because I have an inch excess at the top. So I'm going to set it 7 inches down from the top. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is going to be at line 15. And I'm going to center this down the midline. And so it's 16 inches wide. So I need the middle of my pocket piece, excuse me, to line up at 8 down on my ruler. So turn it this way. Whoops, that's lovely. Okay. Okay, so put it at 7. A bit. All right, and now we are centered. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move over to my machine and I'm going to stitch around that box that I drew. I'm going to shorten my stitch length and I'm not going to stitch down the right and left sides of the box. I'm going to leave those open. I'm just going to stitch at the top and the bottom, being very careful to back stitch well at the beginning and the end. All right, so just going to lower my stitch length to about a 2 point something, 2 point small, 2.3 maybe, 2.2, I don't really know, little. So I'm going to start at the very beginning of the 1 inch line over here, and I'm just going to sew all the way across and stop at the 1 inch line on this end. And then I'm going to pull back and do that next line, the 3/8 inch line. All right, there we go. All right, so I got the lines stitched. You can see them there, just 2 parallel lines. And next what I'm going to do is cut right down the middle of those 2 lines and just in from each end. And then on either end, I'm going to use some scissors and I'm just going to snip a V. If you've ever installed a zipper like this, you're familiar with this technique. It's pretty standard practice. And this is also, excuse me, how you make a welt bucket. So you can see I cut, there it is. I cut the hole here. And then, let me see if I can zoom in to show you the edges. Can you see? See, so I cut like a V. All right, so next what I'm gonna do is I'm going to flip the pocket panel through this hole and press it really well and then top stitch around it. But I will meet you at the ironing board. Okay, so when I'm ironing, I want to get nice crisp seam lines here on my pocket opening. So what I like to do is before I flip, I pull it all the way up to that seam line and I press really well. And then I'm going to flip it and press this side down. And then I'm also going to press in these tiny edges here. So now I'm gonna grab through, flip this through, flip this one through, flip the whole darn thing, and then just work this pocket piece to the inside. Kind of finger press it to keep it in place, and then I'm gonna use my iron and press it well. Flip it back over and make sure the front looks good. It looks good to me. I'm gonna just press this well. All right, simple as that. So now I'm gonna move to my machine and I'm gonna top stitch around this opening. So remember to lengthen your stitch length again. So, have the box stitched down. Just snip my threads from both sides. I don't know why, my machine always kind of makes a mess on the back side. I read in one of the sewing rooms the other day that it has to do with not holding the threads as you stitch, but I was never told to do that, and it just seems like it's getting worse. It never used to be like this. Anyways, so now that that is all stitched, what I'm going to do, since I'm already at the machine, is I'm going to take the bottom portion of my pocket and I'm going to fold it up to meet the top and the sides. And then I'm going to sew the pocket together. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to clip it, make it a little easier. So just clip the pocket together here. And so I'm just gonna flip the entire thing and just lay this side of my pocket down. So I'm gonna have it flipped up. Let's see, this is why my name isn't Grace, because I'm not graceful. So just flip it up to where just the pocket is showing, and I'm gonna stitch all the way around. Voila. And now we have one pocket. Ta-da. Okay, so we've got our pocket all installed and ready to go. And the pattern tells you to, at the end, like when we're putting the lining pieces together, it wants you to leave an opening here on the bottom for turning. But I am going to turn it through the pocket so that there isn't a big seam along the bottom when you look down into the bag. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to trim just a section, a very small section off this bottom, a portion off the bottom of this pocket. And so that's going to allow me to turn the entire bag through later on. And that's why I went ahead and I did lots and lots of back stitching down here to make it really sturdy. So now that we've got that, next thing to do is to lay both lining pieces right sides together, lining up all of the edges. You know the drill, clip and then sew. And I'm going to sew this at a slightly larger seam allowance here all the way around because I want it to fit into the bag nicely. I don't want it to be pooling down there in the bottom. Okay, so I'm just going to clip all this into place. The pattern suggests using a 5/8 seam allowance to make it a snug fit. I think I will try that first, and if it's still not sitting right, I'll come back and do a little more. But what I should have done, so do as I say, not as I do, is you measure in a 2 by 2 inch box before you cut off your seam allowance, because that's going to create the box of the bottom of the bag. So because I already cut my seam allowances, I had to figure out what would equal the 2 by 2 box had I not cut it. And so I'm just going to go with 1.5 by 1.5 because I sewed about 5/8, blah, 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 whatever. So you, before cutting your seam allowance, make sure that you measure your 2-inch boxes, if you're following it the way that I do it. All right, so I'm doing my boxes here, and then I'm going to cut these out. And in the pattern, it has you do this step before you sew the side seams. So if that's how you want to do it, by all means, go ahead. Otherwise, you can just fumble through like I am. Who doesn't like a good challenge? Okay, so now we have to box the bottoms out. So I'm going to just reach in here, and I'm going to line up the seams and box the bottom. If you watched my Melly Sews video where I made the dop kits, then this is the same thing that we did there. So line it up as best as you can. Mine are always a little bit wonky when I do it this way, and it doesn't help that this darn bag is so tall. And of course I didn't backstitch where the box would be, because why would I think like that? Why would I think that far ahead? All right, so I'm just going to get these in place. And then when I stitch, I'm going to create a line, a seam that's going to make this bottom just under 4 inches, because that is the width of the bottom. So I want mine to be just under, so that it nests inside the outside of the bag nicely. And so just under 4. So I'm going to be sewing it at about a 3/8 seam allowance, essentially. 3/8. Oh, no, maybe about half inch seam allowance. But it's better to cut off too little to create this box bottom than it is to cut off too much, because you can't add back. So if you messed up like I did and you cut your seam allowances before you measured out that box bottom, then just cut a little bit, and then then you can make your seam allowance be, or your seam be just shy of 4 inches. So if I want it to be 4, yes, I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to do a 1/2 inch seam on both of these here. And then that'll make it 3.75 inches wide, which will make it nest nicely inside the outside of the bag. All right, so now what I'm going to do is trim my seam allowances down here. And then it is time to put the bags together. And remember, we're going to turn through the bottom of the pocket here. So we closed up this bottom section. All right, and so what I'm going to do is shove this outer panel inside the lining. Right sides together, of course. So bear with me. I want the pocket to be on the back, so actually I'm going to do it this way. To make it easier, I'm going to tighten these straps up as much as they can go. This is generally not a beautiful process. Just kind of going to get there as best as you can. Went in pretty well. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to line up the lining and the outer. I usually start with the corner seams. This is the moment of truth to see if the bag will fit. And so I have a little bit of overlap on what is the front piece of the outside of the body. So I'm just gonna try to keep it as straight as possible all the way around. And I'm gonna mimic that on this other side over here when I get there. Oh no, see? So because I did 5/8 all the way up both side seams, you could see the difference. So there, that's the side seam of the outer and that's the side seam of the inner. So what I'm gonna have to do is take this apart and I'm gonna have to sew up these side seams just a little bit. So flip this bad boy back out. And then you want to make sure that when that happens that you take in on the side seams on both sides, not just one, or else it's going to be uneven and lopsided. Alright, so still have this slight overlap on the top. Right here you can see like that. So actually before I even get started, I'm just gonna cut that off because, oh, why not? Push this lining out of the way really well. So now what we're going to do is grab that lining that's inside, and I'm just going to line up my seams here, pin those in place, and then work my way to the other seam. Get that lined up, and then I will pin all the way around, or not pin, clip. And so what I like to do is just kind of pull it taut and then clip it with it. My nail is trying to break on me. Pull it taut and then clip it with it pulled as taut as possible to alleviate the shifting when we're sewing. We want it to be as tight as possible when we're clipping. We are so close to being done. All right, so now what I'm going to do is just top stitch around this whole top section, and then I'm going to flip it through the pocket, and then we top stitch the actual bag, the final top stitch, and then we're all done. So see you at the machine. So because I don't have a sailor arm machine, because that would be amazing, but I don't, I am going to stitch from the inside. So I'm going to fold this section out of the way and just stitch on the inside. So the video might be a little weird. You're probably going to see a lot of the bottom of the bag, and I apologize, but do what I can. So I'm going to start on one of my seams on the side, and I'm going to sew at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And then you just want to take it nice and slow and ensure that your pieces are lined up so that you get a nice even edge. If there are any particularly bulky areas, I like to backstitch well over those just to keep everything locked in place. Sewing the back side can be a pain in the butt because of all of the straps and the upper loop and all of that jazz. So just be sure again that all of your pieces are matched up, and go slowly and you'll be all right. Super quick. I'm actually going to leave my thick 1/2 inch seam allowance here because whenever I flip and get it all situated and then I top stitch, it'll give me a nice edge to stitch on. So what I'm going to do is pull the lining out, and then I'm going to find the opening of the pocket. I'm going to reach in all the way through to the bottom of the bag. And then just maneuver it through. To get my seams to pop out nicely, I like to roll them. I'm gonna go ahead and throw a couple clips on them since I'm already doing this. Peek. Can't see, it's too dark in there to shine a light on the situation. Looks pretty good in here. So dark, that dark purple. But yeah, there we go. All right, so it looks good. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab this pocket And I'm going to fold it in on itself. Then I'm just going to stitch it closed. I believe I watched a video by Lauren Mormino on this technique, which is incredible. I never would have thought of it on my own. I think this is a complete sewing hack. Probably my best discovery of 2019, I would say, sewing wise, you know. My life was pretty okay in 2019 too. 2018 was a doozy though. And there we go. I'm gonna go top stitch this closed. Top stitched all the way around on the inside. Let's see if I can get the pocket tucked back in nicely. This is a big bag. It's my entire, the entire length of my arms. And then the last step that I'm gonna do is just hit it with a mini iron on the inside and just kind of touch up the pressing on the fabric on the outsides. And then it'll be done. So here it is in all of its glory. It came out great. I love the colors. The mint and the natural look really good with the fabric choice that my customer chose. And there we have it. One range backpack. All right, guys, thank you so much for following along and making a range backpack with me. I hope that you enjoyed the video and all of my snafus, which I'm a pro at making. Feel free to hit the subscribe button and comment, share, follow, join my sewing group. All the information is in the description box or somewhere here on the screen. So be sure to do all that. And yeah, other than that, I really appreciate you being here. Thanks so much. Have a good evening.